First of all, I would like to thank members of the media and members of the Chinese Canadian community from different cities for participating in this national press conference. And I would like to also to extend a special invitation to Senator Yuan Pao Wu from British Columbia, who's joining us today in support, at least in spirit, of what we're doing across the country. My name is Fo Niemi. I'm participating from Montreal. I'm from the Center for Research Action on Race Relations. We are gathering a group of Chinese community leaders from across the country in 6 different cities today in order to talk about an issue that we consider a prime national importance for Chinese Canadian and other communities in Canada from coast to coast to coast. That is the survival and the revitalization and the need to make Chinatowns across the country an integral part of the Build Back movement, both socially and economically, as well as culturally. We are doing this today because, as you know, 1 year after COVID-19, we've seen the devastating social and economic impacts of COVID-19 on every sector of Canadian society. But for the Chinese community and Chinatowns in particular, the impacts have been particularly devastating for a number of reasons, which we're going to talk about with our speakers today. We're talking today about the need for the federal government to set up a national action plan to build back Canada's Chinatown from coast to coast. We are calling on the federal government essentially to play a leadership role in doling out policy programs, measures, all kind of recovery support programs in order to make Chinatowns viable again, to save jobs, to save businesses, and to reinforce the heritage, as well as to promote the unique place that Chinatown plays in the national, as well as the provincial and local histories of this country. When we talk about the Build Back Canada's Chinatowns, we talk about many things. The plan that is being presented to you today has 4 components. The first is about accessible, equitable economic aid, particularly to merchants and other businesses in Chinatowns. The second part is about job training, access job training and retraining. The third part is about enhancing the social and cultural economies through creative and innovative practices to make, among other things, Chinatowns integral part of the national heritage, as well as the historic sites of this country. And the fourth part is to make sure that all government investment in infrastructures will also benefit Chinatowns in terms of renewal of the environment as well as the infrastructure, both architectural infrastructure and even every aspect of the infrastructure that we can think of. So I am very, very honored to present to you now the list of the speakers from different cities. I will go after present you the names and their titles right now, and I will invite them to speak. First, we have Ms. Jessica Chan, who is a member of a working group of Montreal's Chinese of Chinatown. And Jessica is originally from Vancouver, and she's now in Montreal, and among the things, to bring her expertise in urban planning and development to the process in Montreal. And after Jessica, Dr. Joseph Wong, who is the founding president of National Council, Chinese Canadian National Council, as well as presently the founding director of the Chinese Canadian National Council for Social Justice from Toronto, will speak. Dr. Wong is considered one of the leading citizens of the city, and we are very, very honored to have him join us to speak from Canada's biggest city. After that, we will have Jennifer Chan, who is involving many Chinese community organizations in Winnipeg, and Jessica is also president of the Women of Color Community Leadership Initiatives in that city. Mr. Anthony Foni will follow Jennifer. He is the executive director of the Chinatown Transformation Collaborative Society of Edmonton. And then he will be followed by the Honorable Teresa Wu-Paul, former provincial cabinet minister of Alberta, and she's also the founder of the ACT Foundation in Calgary, and she's also actively involved in Chinatown development and rebuilding initiatives in that city. Last but not least, we're going to have Michael Tan, who is the co-chair of the Vancouver Chinatown Legacy Stewardship Group, which is a group that has been planning for the Chinatown development and revitalization for a long time. So those are the 6 community people who will be speaking one after the other and to explain why we need this national action plan to build back Canada's Chinatowns. Afterwards, at the end, I will invite Senator Wu to say a few words, and then afterward, we'll open the question to journalists. So without any further delay, I would like to invite Jessica Chan from Montreal to say a few words.
Thank you, Pho. As Pho mentioned, I used to be a planner with the City of Vancouver, working with the Downtown East Side and Chinatown community until my move to Montreal about 8 years ago. I'm currently an active member of the Chinatown Working Group, which is a grassroots community group advocating for Chinatown's interest. Montreal's Chinatown has very complex and rich urban landscape. The long history alongside with the development of Montreal is small business that have strong roots in the neighborhood, and the senior residents call this place home. The merchants, restaurants, and cultural workers who welcome local visitors and international tourists, and of course, the many social, cultural, health, and community organizations that make Chinatown a place of sanctuary for over a century. The pandemic, rising racism, and economic downturn, they actually pose a grave challenge to a community that is already very concerned with a number of issues, such as gentrification, housing affordability, community health, and fragile cultural heritage assets. City of Montreal only officially recognized our Chinatown's historic and cultural significance last November, last year. Such recognition is very important for us to be able to care for this neighborhood properly with the right type of plans, development regulations, and right type of urban infrastructure investment. Only with proper understanding of Chinatown's significance and with an inclusive vision, then we can develop a plan to revitalize the community, for the community, together with the community. There have been a number of historic wrongs in terms of discriminatory policies and urban renewal projects, like the Guy Favreau complex or the highways. They broke up Chinatown's existing urban fabric from back then. So when we talk about build back Chinatown, we must first invest in the people, their livelihood, the homes. Then we need to make sure Chinatown's cultural heritage assets and cultural production are part of the economic recovery. And then of course, good community and urban infrastructure that can help not only knit back the broken urban fabric of our Chinatown, but help it grow. Montreal's Chinatown is the last Francophone Chinatown in North America. So we not only need to make sure it survives, but also it will grow with many generations of Montrealers to come. To do that, we need many partners to be our friends of Chinatown and to be part of this effort. And that's why we, the group, the Chinatown Working Group, we are supporting this call for a national action plan to bring back Chinatown together from coast to coast. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I invite Dr. Joseph Wong from Toronto to say a few words.
Thank you very much, Pho. I am in full agreement, and CCNC is in full support of the crucial and noble and critically important initiatives that you are proposing. We are fully in support, and we would like to work together with you and also with many other groups. There are many groups in the Chinese Canadian communities who would like to see that your initiative become successful. So the pandemic, together with this anti-Asian racism, double jeopardy on the problems that we are facing in Chinese communities. And like other cities, Chinese population has been increasing, and we have moved away from the traditional boundaries of the so-called Chinatowns, but they are still a very important part of the Chinese culture and heritage. So we are fully in support of your initiative of rebuilding and building back the Chinatowns. And like other cities, we are now very, very large Chinese community. I think in Toronto, in GTA, we have over 500,000 people, probably 600,000 people of Chinese descent. And we do have in the old city of Toronto, Chinatown proper on along Dundas and Spadina, and we have Chinatown East around Broadway and Gerrard. And in the late 1970s and 1980s, it has moved to Scarborough. Now Scarborough is one of the largest concentration of Chinese Canadians, and everywhere is Chinatown in Scarborough. And around late 1990s and early 2000, Markham and also Mississauga have developed their own Chinatowns and Chinese community concentration. So most of the businesses in the Chinatown areas or in the Chinese community are small ones, mom and pop shops, and hire a small number of employees, and they are usually low paying jobs. And most of them are female jobs, and I mean female workers and older workers. And this is critically important for us to work together with the governments to help them. So the job creation and the training and retraining are very critically important. We need to work with all levels of government, the city, the province, and the federal. And we need to put this particular item into the agenda. So the National Action Group, the National Action Plan, I think it is critically important to get the federal government into the picture, and we would lobby our provincial governments and city governments. I'm quite sure that all are willing partners, and it is important for us to put it into the consciousness of Canadians and the Canadian decision makers to make sure that we are part of the country, a very important fabric. And we have been here for over 200 years, and we belong, and we work together with the government to make sure that anti-Asian racism has no place, and we should help the small business in Chinatown to prosper together with other parts of the economy of Canada after the pandemic. So I'm in full support. CCNC is in full support. We are very pleased to work together with groups across the country, with other cities, and we are here to fight together against this anti-Asian racism.
Thank you, Dr. Wong. The CCNC has for more than 30 years played a national leadership role in fighting for civil rights for Chinese and other Asian Canadians. So we look forward very much to have the CCNC play, and CCNC SJ this time, play a clear leadership role, a strong leadership role as well in these national initiatives. I would like to invite now Jennifer Chan from Winnipeg to say a few words, please. Jennifer.
Thank you, Paul. Hello, everyone. I'm Jennifer Chan from Winnipeg, located in Treaty 1 territory, original lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. On behalf of Women of Color Community Leadership Initiative, it is my honor to support Build Back Canada's Chinatown initiative and share my thoughts from Winnipeg with all of you. Since 1877, the first 3 Chinese immigrants came to Winnipeg. Chinese immigrants' history is over 140 years here in Winnipeg. After the completion of the first phase of the CPR line in 1885, hundreds of Chinese began to settle the prairies. By 1919, Winnipeg had the 5th largest Chinatown and Chinese community in Canada. Chinatown is a special part of Winnipeg's history. It carries unique cultural heritage, and it also carries the struggles of our ancestors, including Chinese immigrants' cultural barriers, economic hardship, and racial discrimination. Since the onset of COVID-19, the Asian community in Manitoba has been disproportionately impacted. Chinatown has been hit especially hard. Chinatown has been ignored for a long time and has deteriorated with no plans to restore it. We need a national strategy. Build Back Canada's Chinatowns initiative presents a comprehensive measures to address economic, social, cultural, and infrastructure developments related to the situation of Chinatown. The government must take action. Chinatown needs to be recognized revitalized, rewriting historical wrongs, and redevelop partnerships with public and private sectors. The National Action Plan needs different levels of government to work together. It needs to work with the community for the community. In 1970s in Winnipeg, there was a Chinatown revitalization plan with the typical top-down mega project approach, which has now resulted in much of Chinatown being surface-level parking lots or just mud. In many people's memory, Winnipeg's Chinatown was attracting because of its physical historic character, diverse small-scale stores along the sidewalk, historic urban streetscapes, and mixed-use buildings. The vibrant street life, engaging storefronts created economic and social networks for the Chinese community and helped the Chinese community connect with the broader community. People remember the iconic and historic Shanghai restaurant. The demolition of the building in 2013 left many sad, but many also hopeful. Sadly, the empty lot left by Shanghai restaurant is still there after 7 years. We see more and more aging infrastructure, empty storefronts, few business opportunities, less and less pedestrians, and lack of community-based planning. On top of this is the social and economic impacts caused by COVID-19. In Winnipeg, we're calling on the government of Canada to provide equitable economic aid for Chinatown small businesses, invest in job creation and training, invest in environmental renewal and infrastructure, especially affordable housing for families and seniors, and provide adequate funding to promote cultural activities, events, and services. Chinatown remains important to the Chinese and the broader Southeast Asian community of Winnipeg, and it connects these communities with the broader community. As a women's organization, we know the value of vibrant, thriving communities. We know the needs of our seniors, especially women, in living within the community that has accessible, culturally appropriate, and welcoming businesses and services. Creating a vibrant community will also help with community safety, both for Chinatown's residents and the community who accesses many services within or around Chinatown. Investing in Chinatown is a winning strategy. We call on the government to ensure the inclusive recovery plan and fulfill its commitment to promoting diversity and restoring our beautiful Chinatown. And thank you so much for letting me share.
Thank you very much. That's a great historical sort of journey you just took us through. And we learned so much, particularly about Winnipeg, said Chinatown. Thank you very much for that, history retrospective, as well as your outlook for the future. I would like to invite now Mr. Anthony Foney from Edmonton to say a few words. We want Alberta to be very strongly in favor and support of this plan. So please go ahead. Did you turn your mic on, please?
Hello, everyone. Good morning and good afternoon to the East Coast. Just a minute. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. My name is Anthony Foney, Executive Director of Chinatown Transformation Collaborative Society of Edmonton. I would like to talk about the situation of Edmonton right now in the current situation. Over the past decade, Edmonton Chinatown has long been seen by the public as a vanishing and degrading destination. Situated in a few blocks away from the downtown core, Chinatown is the center of numerous organizations which offer generous assistance to the unfortunate. In the last few years, the introduction of the free injection site has compounded and increased the socio-economic problems in the area. However, the consequence of poor coordination between government and these organizations is borne by our residents and hardworking businesses in Chinatown. As a result, Chinatown is perceived as an untidy and dangerous area. Instead of welcoming destination once beloved by all Edmontonians, for the authentic cultural experience and being an example of multiculturalism, as some will recall in the past. After years of numerous futile attempts to resist further degradations of the area, the arrival of COVID-19 has hastened residents and businesses' decision to leave Chinatown or simply close down the shops and retire. This is not hard to understand, as we pay the same tax rate as the downtown core, but receive obvious difference in treatment and care. At present time, in Chinatown North, we have at least 35 vacant lots with a total of 4.1 acres and 36 vacant retail and historic buildings. Chinatown South, on the other hand, has since been lost and assimilated into a new zone called the Quarter, which is at present has a vast land of vacant lots owned by developers. This is also our biggest worry, that the root of our Chinatown spirit, the people will leave one by one. Worstly, COVID-19 has brought racism to the forefront. This is hurtful attitude towards Asians, and is based on immature attempt to blame us for the pandemic. The pandemic can only be controlled by cooperations and collaborative efforts by everyone. Edmonton Chinatown is still a home of nearly 90 businesses from different culture and origins. Chinatown might not disappear, but it may become a place without essence. The current harsh climate of business will accelerate the decline of this cherished place, and we urge the government to assist and protect this beautiful area. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anthony. Now we'd like to invite Teresa Wupal from Calgary to join in and say in what way the West want in and the West can make a difference in this national action plan.
Oh, we want in, we want to be part of the movement. So thank you, everyone. First, I'd like to express my appreciation to the Center for Research and Action on Race Relations for your leadership in bringing together community organizations from across Canada in support of the National Action Plan to Build Back Canada's Chinatowns, a proposal of both immediate and long-term implications in economic revitalization, cultural preservation, and strengthening the social bonds of Canadians from key regions of our country. I'm joining you from the traditional territory of Treaty 7 and Métis Region 3 of Alberta. Calgary Chinatown established a permanent foothold, the third Chinatown, in 1910. Similar to Chinatowns in the rest of Canada, one of the foundations of Chinatown is the merchants, business, and working class immigrants that work very hard to establish a vital and sustainable community. According to the 2016 Canadian Census, the Calgary metro area is home to 90,000 who identify as Chinese visible minorities, and over 100,000 people report some ethnic Chinese ancestry. Today's Calgary Chinatown has a population of about 2,500, and taken as a proportion of the overall metro population, Calgary's Chinese population is the 5th largest in North America. Calgary Chinatown, like many others in Canada and North America, has gone through the stages of relocation, development, recent threats of dispossessing by urbanization and gentrification. And Calgary is one of those that managed to survive and now in need of renewal and revitalization. In recent studies conducted by Dr. Matt Patterson of the University of Calgary, it was identified that today's Chinatown continues to serve the 3 basic functions that led to their development in the 19th century: a place for residents, an economic base, and a source of social support. Major recommendations from 11 North America Chinatown neighborhood community plans are summarized as below. Economics and business development of Chinatown as the highest ranking priority, and the recommendations are supporting and attracting businesses, job creation, attract development, tourism, placemaking, and marketing. This is followed by housing, social support, and quality of life. And the recommendations are the need for affordable housing and housing diversity, increase residents, address public safety, crime control, and public health, environmental sustainability. Another top priority is to address the culture, heritage, and the public realm of Chinatowns. And recommendations are expand and improve public spaces, maintenance and beautification of public realm, preservation and rehabilitation of heritage buildings. The above well-studied recommendations for Chinatown align with our council directions to the Calgary Economic Development and Tourism, which include contributions to the local economy from cultural attractions, support for entrepreneurs to launch and grow their businesses, support for strong businesses at the neighborhood level, marketing Calgary as a destination for business and leisure travelers. We are here to support CRARR's National Action Plan to build back Canada's Chinatowns because it is evidence-based with well-established research and expert opinions, local economic imperatives, and strong support from the community and businesses. The COVID-19 pandemic has surfaced many inequities in Canadian society. Asian Canadians have been targeted and scapegoated with implications and disproportionate adverse impacts at the personal, social, community, and economic levels. As we look toward rebuilding of our country, starting now, we must take an inclusive approach in the overall rebuilding plan. Significant cultural spaces and communities must have equitable access to resources, jobs, and social opportunities. Chinese has a saying, something to the extent that there are opportunities behind crisis. The Chinese Canadian community across the country have come together to submit a collective voice and a plan for rebuilding Canada's Chinatowns, a place for all Canadians, economic opportunities, history, cultural vibrancy, a place of connection, identity, and belonging, and a place to learn, co-create, and enjoy by all Canadians. I urge the Government of Canada to support this proposal. Thank you for the opportunity to join you today.
Thank you very much, Teresa. I would like to invite Michael now from Vancouver.
Hi, everyone. It's my honor to be here to speak to you all. My name is Michael Tan. I'm the co-chair of the Vancouver Chinatown Legacy Stewardship Group. It's a City of Vancouver City Council appointed committee to advise council and city staff on specific actions towards a potential UNESCO World Heritage Site bid. That is the official role we play, but we continue to play a leading part in advocating across a wide range of topics to ensure Vancouver's Chinatown, which is a nationally designated historic site, that its cultural heritage is conserved for future generations. I just want to take the opportunity to remind everyone, and Canadians everywhere, that Chinatowns only exist because they were born and created out of racism, right? That Chinese and other Asian Canadians could not settle or safely work in other neighborhoods, that Chinatowns, across the country were and continue to be ghettos, and that the term Chinese, such as that one in the Chinese Exclusion Act, encompassed not just those from, ethnically Chinese heritage, but was Pan-Asian, including Japanese, Filipino, Vietnamese, anyone of East Asian heritage. And that's what Chinatowns were. It was this home to everyone. So out of this racism was born also this inclusiveness. And that from these decades and centuries of being in Canada, this has institutionalized itself into this institutional racism, systemic racism, and has evidenced itself now through unequal access, and unequal opportunity, and of which the COVID crisis and pandemic has laid this bare for everyone to see, that Chinese Canadians and Chinatowns across Canada are left behind and overlooked. Here in Vancouver, what we've seen during the pandemic, Granville Island, if you're familiar with Granville Island, it's a non-racialized community, higher income. It's a beautiful tourism destination. It was created in the 70s, through efforts to support it. At the same time, on the other hand, in the 70s, Chinatown was fighting to not to be destroyed by the freeway and other racist policies from all levels of government. So over those decades, what we see now during the pandemic is they have that infrastructure to lobby directly to the government. They were given a $17 million emergency bailout, separate from any of the other federal funding supports afforded across Canada, versus because they were able to advocate early. And Chinatowns everywhere else, with mostly being a patch of volunteers, were left with nothing. I don't even want to get into the inequities of the vaccination access here in Vancouver, which we just had a huge clinic yesterday that we were working towards. But on top of these inequities to access, Vancouver has experienced a 717% increase in hate crimes directed at Asian Canadians. So not only have our communities not been afforded the same opportunities as other Canadians and continue to be overlooked, we are being attacked in the streets. Chinatowns, coming back to, being born out of this racism and exclusion, being located here in Vancouver, we're located adjacent to the downtown east side, and notorious as the poorest area code in Vancouver, or sorry, in Canada, where desperation, is endemic from issues relating to rampant addiction, mental health, homelessness, and opioid deaths. To help Chinatowns, we also need to fully address these issues as well, and that is characteristic across Chinatowns in Canada. So we here in Vancouver, at the Vancouver Chinatown Legacy Stewardship Group, we are supporting this call for all levels of government to provide economic aid to Chinatowns across Canada to build back better, to fully address these systemic inequities relating to economic, health, job creation, cultural heritage, not just for Chinese Canadians, but for all Canadians. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As I mentioned earlier, we're very, very honored to have Senator Yuan Paul Wu here with us from British Columbia, and I would like to invite Senator Wu to say a few words. We so appreciate your participation today.
Thank you, Fo, and it really is my honor to be part of this press conference. I really want to speak as little as possible to save time for the questions, but let me just say that I'm speaking to you from Chinatown in Ottawa, where I'm here, of course, for the work of the Senate. I can tell you that it's not typical for a parliamentarian to be living in Ottawa's Chinatown. It's a wonderful area, and I chose to be here in part because of its historic importance, because of the symbolism, I suppose, of being a parliamentarian living in Chinatown, and of course because of the wonderful food and other amenities that Ottawa's Chinatown and many Chinatowns across the country offer. But there's no question that this Chinatown and Chinatowns across the country are going through various degrees of crisis, and that we need a national strategy for all of the elements that you've talked about: the need to have accessibility, the need for job training, the need to enhance social and cultural assets, and of course, not least, to build back the infrastructure. All of this is of heightened importance given the rise in anti-Asian racism. I take to heart Michael's point that Chinatowns exist because of historic racism in this country, and they continue to be focal points or victims or locations for a lot of racist activity. Just last night, as I was walking back from the Senate to Chinatown, I encountered somebody who gave me the finger, presumably because I was Chinese. I don't know for sure, but clearly the kind of hate that we see that has gone up since COVID-19 is very distressing. And what you're doing to revitalize Chinatowns across the country, I think can play a part in pushing back against anti-Asian hate. So back to you. Congratulations on your initiative.
Thank you very much, Senator. I would like to say just a few words before we go to journalist questions. I think from everyone we heard today, that there is a crying need to revive and revitalize and to build back Chinatowns and to build back all the Canadian cities and to build back the Canadian economy and Canadian society as a whole. And I think that after hundreds of years of the Chinese being cheap labor to build the Canadian railways, now I think the Chinese Canadians are ready to become the builders again, but they will be the architects, the business people, and also the caregivers in order to go to the next stage of the Canada, the post-COVID-19 world. And what you've heard today is that in every city, there are so many efforts to build back Chinatowns. And this is why when we bring people together from coast to coast, we hope to have people from Regina, from the Maritimes joining us as well. Eventually, there is a justification for the federal government to adopt a national action plan to build back Chinatown. And if that is the case, that could very well be the first plan of its kind in the world. And we hope Canada will be playing this leadership role and to be a shining light to the United States and to Europe, wherever there are Chinatowns that are also experiencing the same hardship and the same challenges